Trends Magazine presents Wedding Talk Wednesdays. Join Tashar and her featured guests every Wednesday on Zoom, 7 p.m. Central. Weddings and lifestyles are our things. This is Love and Money Mondays with your host, Tashar Matthews.
Hi everyone, I'm Tashar Matthews Shabazz, the editor-in-chief for Trends Magazine. We are here today with Love and Money Mondays. I'm so excited to have my guest, Kim DeFlanders. Kim is a licensed therapist here in the state of Mississippi, and her mission is to provide clients with the guidance needed to draw on their own strengths to reach a more self-fulfilling life. Please welcome Kim to the show. Hey, Kim.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Great. Well, in the past few weeks, I've been speaking to couples about love and money, especially around with the new COVID twist added to it. A lot of times we know that money is some of the reasons why couples have issues in their marriage. It may be one of the top reasons. So I thought it would be great to talk to a therapist, to bring you in and provide us with some tips and techniques that we can use, especially with our newly engaged or newlyweds with the magazine. I just thought it would be great for us to have a conversation with you. So my first question is, what are some of the issues that you're seeing in your practice now, especially during this COVID-19 time?
Well, a lot of the issues, that I'm seeing right now is stress. We know we have the normal day-to-day stressors, and with the pandemic, we have even additional stressors, such as unemployment, money issues. And so right now, that's a big thing, and learning how to manage that stress and learning how to communicate through this time.
Okay, so as couples, how can they stay more connected during this time? Even though I know we've been in quarantine and we've been in tight quarters for quite some time, but sometimes there's still not a connection. What are some tips or techniques couples can do to stay connected?
Okay, so to me, communication is extremely important, right? So some things that we can do to connect is getting back to the basics, right? Being more specific with what our needs are, being, instead of having broad statements, being, tuning down what it is that you actually need at that particular time. Avoiding misreading, mind reading, avoid mind reading, because, sometimes our husbands or our wives, will assume they already know what we're going to say.
Right.
And so that just brings on additional stressors. That's kind of difficult to do. Sometimes we don't want to necessarily hear what our partner is saying, but we have to learn how to listen without being defensive, being able to express ourselves in a more positive way rather than focusing on the negative things. So you're looking for, instead of saying, I did not like how you left the dishes in the sink, you may say, I appreciate it when you put your dishes up. That's just an example, small example, but just getting back to the basics, making sure that we're spending quality time together outside of the children. And so we have to make sure that we get that husband and wife time in as well.
Okay. So because I think communication is definitely key. And sometimes what I've noticed with some of my couples that I have, their husbands may have a small business. And so there has definitely been added more stress to those couples who've had, one may have the stable income and the other one may not have a stable income at this time. What would be some techniques as far as having those tough conversations with the spouse that has a small business? Because we already know that they're stressed out about it, but you want to make sure that you're communicating that you're being supportive during this time. What are some things that you can offer?
So some techniques that I have encouraged my other clients to use is one, and it all revolve around communicating, but just being supportive, letting your spouse know that you're there to listen, that you understand that there's going to be changes that are taking place due to the pandemic that may require sitting down, going over your finances again, just to, see what we can kind of put to the side, what are the main things that we need to maintain the household, but just overall being supportive, and no defensiveness.
Okay. Yeah, that's really great. So as the states are starting to open up and we're returning to somewhat a normal or a regular new normal, it seems like we may be going in different directions because we have been in quarantine together. What should we do as we starting to go back into society and as far as getting back to the normal life we had?
Okay, so that too, that takes a conversation of, sitting down, kind of mapping out, especially if you have children, how that's going to go, because, it's not just the parents that are stressed, it's children, the entire family. So just sitting down, mapping out a plan of day-to-day activities, just so there won't be any confusion. And then when there comes confusion, comes irritability and all those kind of things. So just sitting down, talking about a plan, how we're going to, the work hours, how we're going to manage the income, who's going to be responsible for the day-to-day activities, the children, the maintenance of the vehicles, everything. Just, going back, sitting down and having a conversation of what the future is going to look like.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely because just as everybody's been kind of closed up into their own doors, and so now that we're moving back into a little normalcy, just curious about that, and with the children, making sure that I guess the children are included in the conversation as well, so they'll kind of know.
Definitely, yes,
Right.
definitely. And also still maintaining that safety piece, that social distance piece, teaching our children about the mask and the hand sanitizers and washing hands and keeping their distance. So just really sitting down, having a family conversation.
Okay. Do you think now is a good time to start having conversations about the next 6 months as far as setting new goals for the family and having more of those positives, maybe possibly having a vacation of some sort? You think
Most definitely. Sorry to cut you off. Most definitely, like when this COVID-19 happened, of course, we were not expecting this.
right?
So I'm sure a lot of people were caught off guard, with savings and this just the stresses of how we're going to maintain the household. And so, yes, financial planning is extremely important. We can afford to put back, or hopefully we can afford to put back just a little bit to plan a getaway. Because right now, like you said, we have all been locked up in the house with each other.
Right.
Yes, definitely locked up in the house with each other.
Yes.
And, worried, just stresses of day to day, how we're going to do this. If this goes further than the summer, how are we going to maintain? So yes, putting back a little bit, start thinking about a vacation. It doesn't have to be where you're spending a lot of money, because we do have to keep in mind finances. And we know, we've heard on the news that this could, rear its head again, during the winter months. So plan a small getaway over the weekend that doesn't cost much money, but just some time to kind of reconnect with your spouse.
Okay. So you think it'll be good to try to maybe just do a couples, just the spouse weekend at first?
Most definitely, yeah. Because if mom and dad's not right, then nothing else is right. So yeah, we got to get mom and dad back in the groove of things, reconnecting, and then yes, we definitely bring the children in.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when I'm thinking about some of the couples who do have husbands that have a small business, we as women, we have a tendency to internalize whatever they're thinking about as it being personal towards us. So if they're having worries about money, they may be a little quiet. And we sometimes say, well, did I do something? We're being defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So is there ways that we can not be so defensive, but let them know that we can be supportive, or we understand that they're, stressed or worried, but it's going to be okay? Is there ways that we can better communicate that?
Yes, just exactly what you said. There's definitely ways that we can be more supportive, even though we know we have to let them know that we are being more supportive of them. But that also takes a conversation with them, letting us know exactly, their stressors. What are they feeling, and having an idea of the expectations. So it's not just a conversation, you know, from the wife, but the male also has to be able to communicate what's going on, what's he's feeling, what's the stressor. And then it is our role to be that helpmate, to support our spouses. And just being there, reassuring your husband that it's going to be okay, that you're there, you're there to go through the process with him, and that you're willing to help him in any way possible to, you know, maintain the household.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is really key, because men have a tendency to they shut down their feelings when they're, especially when they're worried. So I think that's really great. So I do.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but you know, yeah, they do shut down. They do, but it's our role to try to have, you know, to get them to have an open conversation as well, right? Because again, we don't want to mind read. We don't want to assume that we know what's going on.
Right.
We know what assumptions does. So we want to make sure we're able to have an open conversation of exactly what's going on.
Okay.
You know?
Right. So for couples that are engaged and it's already stressful to plan a wedding during a regular time, it's even more stressful to plan a wedding during COVID-19 and so many uncertainties. What are some things you recommend for those couples that may have the wedding being a stressor as a part of the relationship?
Okay. So some things that I would recommend for those that are in the midst of planning a wedding is, I mean, whether you want to or not, you have to consider, is this something that I need to do at this particular time? I mean, do I need to consider, you know, scheduling it further, you know, later in the year? So that's one thought. You got to be realistic in that, because just let's look at it, it may not happen. So, yeah, especially happen the way you want it to happen.
Right.
So, you know, being considerate of possibly having to shift your timeline, being flexible, you know, being creative. You know, you may not be able to have it in this elaborate church or wherever that you want to have with hundreds of people. So you may have to kind of downsize. Also recognizing what's the priority. The priority is coming together with this person that you love and you plan to spend the rest of your life with. And so that's the main priority. Yes, we do want to celebrate it. We do want to have a wedding, but the priority is making sure you're with the spouse. Asking for help. A lot of times we have a difficult time doing that, but asking for help. Consider getting a wedding planner if that's needed. Of course, we at this time we want to make sure we're doing things on a budget.
Right.
Yes, most definitely. Being organized helps. Yeah, making sure you have everything lined up. Taking breaks if you need to take a break. If you need to go away for a week, get away from it, you know, for a week, do that, and then come back at it. Meditation may help, some yoga, doing some yoga or something like that. Definitely getting plenty of rest.
Okay.
You gotta make sure you're getting plenty of rest and exercise. So those are just a couple of things that you can kind of help you get through that stressful period of planning a wedding, because it's already stressful without COVID.
Right.
So this just makes it even more. So you definitely got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you are able to be a little flexible.
Yeah, and I like that you said take a break, maybe just a week of not planning the wedding. I like that, so that you can regroup and understand, you know, what's going on, and maybe have to pivot some. So I think I really like that, taking a week off. So what are some of the techniques that couples can make sure that their spouse or their significant other they're being heard, especially during this time, because it is a lot of stress, and so a lot of things are going through a person's mind. So what are some techniques or tips that you can provide?
Okay, so I know you've heard me say this word probably 6 times since we've been on this short video, but learning how to effectively communicate.
Okay.
Right. So that is the number one, learning how to communicate, making sure that your body language is not aggressive and that you're open and receptive to whatever it is that your partner is saying. Whether you want to hear it or not, you got to remain open. at least considering, what they're saying. Asking for feedback. If you don't, when you put your opinion out there, asking your spouse, what do you think about that? Getting clarification. If you have concerns or questions about what they're saying, asking, for clarification so you can make sure that you're actually understanding, what they're saying. And also listen with your whole self. Sometimes we can be in a conversation and our husband may be talking to us and we're looking at reality shows over here, but then we'll look back at him just so he'll think we're kind of paying attention.
Right.
Just being in the moment of giving your husband or your spouse, whoever, your full attention so that they know that you're actually, paying attention and listening.
That is so true. Yeah, being, I guess, mindful of where you are and
Right.
being in that moment. So I that's can be me sometimes. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm listening.
And then also asking your partner to restate what you said, right? Just so we can make sure that we're on the same page. What did you hear me say? And sometimes it's totally off. And then that gives you an opportunity to go back and explain exactly what you actually meant. So, yeah.
So what are some of the questions that you ask when couples come in to maybe do a consultation, or, they understand that there are some stressors in their relationship? So what are some of the questions that you ask them that can be thought-provoking to my guest?
Okay, so the questions would depend on if we're doing premarital counseling or if we're doing marital counseling.
Okay.
So in premarital counseling, some of the questions that I would ask is pretty much asking them how they communicate overall.
Okay.
How they communicate, have they had discussions about finances, how that's going to be handled, have they had discussions about their personal and their career goals, making sure they're on the same page about that, and also how they problem solve. So, of course, just because you're not married don't mean you haven't had conflict. So in that period of the engagement, how did they problem solve? And was it successful? Those kind of questions. Well, with the married couple, so one of the main questions is I'm asking them, what do they perceive as the problem?
Okay.
It could be totally different. One will say sex and one may say finances. So making sure we have an understanding of what they perceive as the problem. And then the second question I ask is, are you coming to me in order to learn how to, maintain a healthy marriage? Or are you coming to me to learn how to divorce happy? And so that kind of determines what course you go to, what course you take as well. So those kind of things, that'll depend on, how we move along the sessions. I'm sorry. And so it kind of goes from there.
Okay. I like that. How do you problem solve when you're asking the engaged or premarital counseling? How do you problem solve? And I think sometimes too, engaged couples hint about wanting to have children, but they never really talk about how many children they actually want to have and come to an agreement on that early on. And also very, very key is their career goals, because
Right.
the person that you marry will not be that same person within a year.
Correct.
Or within the next 10 years, because people grow. And so knowing that up front what those goals are, I think are very key. So they won't say, well, that's not who I married.
Right. And then also with the premarital counseling is, making sure they know, just like what you said, things change. I may have started out saying I want 3 children, but after I have the first one, I'm like, that's enough. I don't want any more. And so letting them know that I have a 30-year-old and that's enough for me.
Right. I have a 30-year-old.
Wow. But yeah, just, letting them know that things do not stay the same.
Right.
But that's okay too. But you just got to make sure that you're having conversations when you realize those things are changing.
Right. So I've been asking the couples that I've interviewed so far if it's separate or joint, and both couples have said that they use joint. Has that been an issue in the guys the accounts, how the accounts were set up, joint or separate, or do you ever get into those discussions with them about that?
We do. We do talk about finances, especially with the pre-marriage counseling, and determining, because it's different. It could be, it doesn't, there's no one fix for everybody. You have to figure out what's kind of best for you. And so a lot of couples do this, or at least this is how they start out saying they'll do it. They'll have a household account, that'll be a joint account, and then they'll each have their separate accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And so how I recommend, this is just my recommendation, is how we determine how much you need to put in a joint account versus how much I need to put in a joint account is not necessarily determined by you put $1,000 in and you put $1,000 in, because you may make much more money than I make. So I do percentages. So we have both put in, this is just 50% of our income. That amount's going to be different depending on the income, but that means one person won't necessarily be giving everything they have. They'll still have their own little spending money or whatever it is they need to do. And so doing it based on percentages rather than a set amount.
Okay, that I like that. I really like that, because like you said, not everybody's making the same, so that makes more sense to do a percentage than to say. So that I like that. That's a really great advice.
Yeah.
I really like that. Okay. So how can couples be better prepared for emergencies, for future emergencies? I know with Dev Financial, the other company that I have, I always talk about emergency savings.
Mm-hmm.
And so it depends on how much, everybody says different amounts, but at least 1,000 would be good. Well, how do you help couples prepare for that, for future emergencies?
So one thing I think that we all, if this has not taught us anything other than it has taught us that we definitely need to be more prepared.
Right.
And so I think that we always have to assume that there's going to be another rainy day.
Right.
It's going to happen.
Right.
No doubt about that. It's going to happen. And so really, kind of sitting down, looking at your budget, determining how much you need for today, day-to-day living,
Mm-hmm.
versus how much we can put that 10% or whatever it is you decide in the, the savings account, and then even additional 5% as an emergency fund.
Okay.
And so over time, that little 5% does build up. So really just but you have to determine, how much you only know, what your finances are. So you have to determine the amount that you can put in. It may not be 5%, it may be 3%, but still setting some kind of emergency fund aside, and just being realistic with your goals, what your goals are. If you know you can't save $1,000 a month, then don't set that as a goal, right? Maybe automating your savings rather than saying, okay, when I get paid, I'll put $20 in there. Just have it actually taken out off the top. That way you don't have to see it, you don't have to remember it, you don't have to deal with it. So just making sure it go directly to that account, and also keeping your emergency fund separate from your day-to-day fund.
Okay.
It's too easy to say, oh, well, I'll take $300 from here and put it over here. We're not going to have an emergency anytime soon, so I'll put it back later. And then later comes and we don't have it. We haven't even thought about putting it back. And then before we know it, there's another emergency that we, again, are not prepared for. So just making sure you keep it separately, and choosing an account that works for you. An account that you can probably draw some little interest off of, but it's nothing that you can go in every day and get money out of it if you want to.
Right.
But if you need it, there's a way it's accessible for you in the case of an emergency.
Right. Have any couples ever talked to you about the amount of money that they feel like they need to have a conversation about? So say you're making a purchase of $150, or do they talk to you about purchase limits and having those conversations?
Yeah, we have had those conversations. And again, that depends on your lifestyle, how much money you make as to how much you can spend. $25 may be too much for somebody.
Right.
again, setting a realistic goal of and coming to an agreement on what it is that we need to have a discussion about if we decide to spend versus what we could both be okay with. So yeah, we've had those conversations, but it's not just a dollar amount we come up with, but it is a conversation that need to be had for sure.
And that's definitely in the premarital stages.
That's definitely in the premarital stages.
Okay,
Yes.
great. That's good to know. That's good to know. So, what are some tips that you can share to help people cope with the quarantine? Because some people are still afraid of going back to the restaurants and going back. I know the casinos. I'm not a big casino person, but going back to those venues, what are some of the things that you can do during this time as we're starting to open back up? What are some tips that you could offer us?
So what I say about that is that we've had about 2 months.
Yeah.
About 2 months where we've been okay. We made it through 2 months and we didn't go to the casino, right?
Right.
We didn't have to go to the casino in 2 months. So I say, what's the rush? What, just because the governor has opened those businesses up, what is the rush to go back? It's okay. It's okay to continue staying at home and enjoying your family and playing Monopoly and Uno and all those things and sitting out on your deck or whatever, relaxing. So I say, it's not a rush. It doesn't mean that just because it's open, we got to go to Island View tonight.
Right.
You can still take your time. You can still continue to look at the stats and see what the numbers are doing. But however, if it's just, you just have to go out there and give them that $25 or whatever it may be, making sure that you practice the safety things that have already been set out for us with the sanitizing your hands and wearing your mask and the gloves and all that stuff, and making sure you stay your distance if you have to go out, but I wouldn't rush to go out because we still don't know what's exactly going to happen.
Right.
But we've had to give Walmart and Winn-Dixie and all those things our share of money. So the same precautions that we have taken to do those things, we have to continue. Yeah. But of course we get tired of staying in the house. I know I have anyway. I've gotten tired of staying in the house. So getting creative. My husband and I bought skates, and so we've been kind of skating around the community. Yes. Bike ride. I'm sore as I don't know what.
I bet so.
We've been doing some bike riding, so we have to get kind of creative with our recreation right now until we can get comfortable with going back out to Ross and TJ Maxx and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just being patient.
Yeah, and I know that now with everything opening back up, budgets are about to change because it's really just been the essentials. And now it's going to be back to, even though gas is essential, but now it's going to be using more gas because now some people are going back to work, and now it's going to be, maintenance of vehicles again because people are out and about.
Right.
So I guess people need to look more at their budgets now, reflecting that there is going to be an increase, and it's not just food anymore.
Right.
Because I think I didn't have to fill up for like a month because I wasn't going anywhere, just to Walmart and back home.
Yeah. I tell you, we have been eating a lot.
Yes, my food budget has definitely increased.
Yes, indeed. I have my husband looking at reality TV now. That's another one of our recreations.
Right. Whatever to survive, right?
That's right.
Well, good. Well, if someone needs your services, how can they get in touch with you?
Okay, I am located, my office is actually located in Premier Professional Counseling Services office. My direct business line is 601-557-2185, or my email address is Kimila DeFlanders.lcsw@gmail. And that's KIMILADEFLANDERS.LCSW@gmail.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us. I feel like this topic is going to be very, very useful and helpful to my readers. and to others who may listen in. And so I just thank you for taking the time and spending it with us.
Thank you. I hope I was able to help someone. And again, thank you. And it's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.